Good morning, one and all. I hope you can all hear me clearly. Welcome to the first storyboarding journalism session hosted by the Indian Institute of Journalism and New Media, Bangalore. Through these sessions, we aim to check in with working journalists. We want to know more about their work, their aspirations, trajectories, and the pure joys and challenges of being a working journalist and being in the industry. So it gives the younger generation a chance to glimpse into the life of a working journalist and understand what a real work day looks like. And therefore, I urge all of the participants here to ask as many questions as possible, to interact as much as possible, and use this opportunity really wisely. So you can use the chat box function here if you have questions while the speaker is speaking, or you can save your questions till the end of the session. We will have a 20-minute question and answer session towards the end. So you can use that opportunity, or if you have any questions, as I said, you can utilize the chat box. So without any further ado, I would just like to welcome Paul Oommen to today's session as a speaker. So Paul is an IIJNM alumnus, and he is the News Minutes Hyderabad bureau chief. He handles a team of reporters who cover news from Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. His role allows him to travel across the Telugu states to bring out special reports, not restricting him to a particular beat. From reporting on macabre crimes to working on investigative stories and ground reports to unveiling important angles to regular stories, Paul loves to head where the story is unfolding. So today, Paul will be talking about his stories and his experiences as a journalist. So he's been working for over 7 years as a journalist now. So I'll ask Paul to take it from here. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Nandana. Good morning to all of you. Happy to have you all here. I'm just waiting. Shall we start, Nandana?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So around 8 years ago, I was in your position, not knowing what to do. I was confused. I was looking out at options. I just completed my mechanical engineering from Hyderabad. And I had two things in hand. One was to convince my parents that I want to do journalism, and second was to ensure that I get admission into a good college or good university. So the first one happened organically, not getting into those details. The second one, about getting admission into a good college, I had applied to several colleges, out of which I chose to join IIJNM. And I was there in the 2014 and 15 batch. I did my broadcast journalism from IIJNM. And it was a very interesting experience. I'm here today to share small snippets from my 7 year, it's not a very long journey, but my 7 year journey as a journalist. And I've been fortunate to have been on the desk, have been out reporting the last 7 years, and also I've been able to experience both TV and digital. So I'm assuming, or I hope, that my experience that I share with all of you today would be helpful in some way or the other. Yeah, Suryansh, I can see your question. We'll take your questions in the end. Okay, let me just quickly tell you about the stories, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions. We'll take up all of them in the last 20 minutes. So let me start by beginning. I'm sure a lot of you are first. You must be confused about whether you want to do journalism, and second, if you're already made up your mind to do journalism, I'm sure you're confused about which branch to take it up to take up. So I had taken up broadcast journalism, one, because I'm very comfortable on camera, and second, it really excited me to be part of the TV industry. So I studied broadcast journalism, and it was a very interesting course at IIJNM because we had to do our own stories, we had to go out, we had to produce our stories, shoot our own stories, buy our own camera. That was my first camera, and then so all these were part of the experience, and it gave us a lot of experience in terms of multiple roles. So in TV itself, there are multiple roles, as in you can be in front of the camera, you can be behind the camera. There's production. There are technicalities in the TV industry, so you can choose. Are you a person who wants to be in front of the camera? Someone who wants to be behind? I was very clear that I want to be in front of the camera. I want to be out there where the story is. I want to report. So it was kind of easy for me even when the others in the batch were confused about, because the first 1 month, almost 30 days, there's something called as a boot camp, wherein you can experience all the three, the best of all the three branches, and then by the end of it, you can choose what branch you want to take. So I was very sure from the beginning that I wanted broadcast, no confusions about that. Whereas a lot of others were confused, and after the boot camp as well, we had people changing their minds about which branch you want to take. So, number one point that I want to raise today is that I had studied broadcast journalism, but today I am in the digital journalism. I'll talk in the next 40 minutes about my journey from TV to digital and the pros and cons of both. But I want to say that the branch that you choose now is not your end result. It's probably what you want to do the best, or probably what you really are interested in. But the boot camp gives you a great experience to experience all three branches, and that's a beauty of this particular the provision of having a boot camp during the short course at IIJNM. I've been asked to share a few experiences of mine in the last 7 years, some stories of mine, and if I could bring about some impact from them, hoping that it'll give you some insight into journalism and the journalist life. Let me start off by sharing a story from IIJNM. I was hoping I could see all your faces, but most of you have turned off your cameras. It seems like I'm talking to myself, but anyway, I'll leave that to you guys. So, two stories that I want to share from IIJNM. Yeah, thanks, Suraj. Yeah, two stories I want to share. One, I had taken up investigative journalism as an option during my course at IIJNM, and we were under the impression that investigative journalism is rocket science. We don't have the technical capabilities for that, or we keep reading about these big investigative stories, and then we were under the impression it's something very difficult and doesn't come across easily. The first 1 week we broke our heads. We were going about whining to the other branches. Why did we even choose investigative journalism? We don't know how to go about it. And so we had to do two stories as part of the investigative journalism course. And I was there. I don't know if you visited the campus. Very close to campus, we have a place around 2 to 3 kilometers away. I was sitting there at a small hotel eating dosa, and right beside that place was a puncture repair guy, a cycle puncture guy. So I was sitting there and eating dosas, and I realized that he had a lot of customers that particular day. And I've noticed even earlier that a lot of people, especially small kids, keep coming to him with their cycles. And interestingly, all those cycles looked brand new. Like most of them didn't even have the wrappers taken out. So I was wondering, why are these new cycles being brought to this puncture guy? What is it that they're getting repaired? I sat there and observed. And then I went and had a conversation with him in the broken Kannada that I knew. And then what I understood was that as part of the Karnataka government scheme, all the students, especially girls, if I remember right, were given free cycles once they complete or they enter into the seventh standard, which means all these students were given new cycles by one particular company. And I asked, so then why they bring in the new cycles to you? So they said a lot of parts in these cycles are missing. Either the bush or the brake pads are worn out, or the pedal is missing, or the bell is missing. So there are several parts in a new cycle that are missing, which meant the government scheme was clearly flawed because they were giving out cycles, but the cycles had flaws in them, and which meant on an average around 300 to 500 was spent by each student. Remember, all these students are from government schools, and they had to shell out an extra 500 on a free gift that is being given to them by the Karnataka government. I kind of thought about it, and I thought probably this is interesting. I went back, I discussed it with my faculty. Back then, it was a foreign faculty called as Charles, and he said, "You are reaching somewhere. You should probe more." So I went back, I looked at certain documents, and I found out who the brand was. I think it was a Hero, or it was a brand from Punjab, if I remember right. And I got their contact number. I sent out a mail saying I'm a student from IIJNM. You can imagine how much people would take you seriously when you say you're a student. But surprisingly, I got a reply to that mail, and they said, "Is this the case? We never knew that this is happening. We shall get it checked." And then I went back to them, replied to them saying, "Very soon I'm going to put out a story on this." I was not even prepared for the story. I just said, "I'm going to put out a story soon on this. If you would like to comment on this or give me a clarification, please do so as soon as possible." I got a call from one of their people. One, he gave me a clarification and said, if this is the case, as I'm saying, he would set up a camp in the schools to ensure that this is done for free. The repair is done for free, and requested that I don't carry the story. One, because it would be it would tarnish the image of the company. And second, the scheme's flaw would have been exposed. And then I got a third call saying they want to meet me in person. They asked me to come to Bengaluru city, to which my faculty clearly said, you're not going to meet anyone. You want to take course, you can do it on the phone. We don't advise you to go and meet anyone at this level. We were just students, we were figuring out our ways. We were too naive at that point of time. And then, yes, I did not meet them. I stopped taking further calls because the calls started getting a little pestering. They were very desperate to ensure that the story is not out. Finally, we put out the story. I say it like from not knowing what investigative story was to putting out a story, and finally them assuring that cycle camps would be set up to ensuring that all the cycles are repaired. We also put out details of the story and their response. So it was a great experience. I thought from eating a dosa to having a great investigative story, great in the sense for a student, I think it was a great story to start off with. Similarly, I was very happy about having cracked the first story. Again, the pain of the second story came. So we have to give two stories for the course. And then again, as usual, I was eating. You can see how I look. I enjoy food. I'm a foodie. So I was eating again. This was a little away at Kengeri. I was at a restaurant there near the bus stand. And there we went to pay the bill at the counter. And then I realized there are some donation boxes that were there at the counter. This is not new. We have all seen donation boxes at the counter. But interestingly, I saw a mountain of boxes, around 6 or 7 boxes. So I just took a photo of that. And then I went back to college. And then I was thinking, I zoomed in and realized that the addresses on 2, 3 boxes were same. So I figured out, why are they putting multiple boxes? Like, it makes it look like they're different organizations. So then I discussed this with my sir, and he said, why don't you probe a little more? And then I went back to that place in the name of this. I went and ate a little more food there, and also figured out that the addresses were indeed same on a couple of boxes. So then came the next step. We went to that particular address. We found out one particular place where they claimed that they had several old age people, and it was an old age home. We went there to only find one person who was there, one old man in that particular old age home. We went back to, I thought I got a great story. I went back to sir and said, one is not, it might just be, an exception. You need to find more examples. And I'm like, back to square one again. We went back to the hotel again. And then we took another couple of more addresses and we went and followed them and found that second one didn't even exist at the place where they claimed it existed. So there, we had like 2, 3 examples. We went back to college and said, this is clearly a scam. So I thought, again, we had a great story. And against Charles, his name was Charles, he was not impressed enough. He said, you have a story, but not a great story. Okay. He was Scottish. So he had this accent in which he said, not a great story. You need to go back. And then I went back to that restaurant again. And he asked us to check out when they come for collection of money from the box. So then we found out details on which day of the week they come. We went and stood there and we followed them, only to realize that the man who was collecting money stayed in a house right beside that address where the orphanage was located. So we spoke to him and we found out that he claimed that the people had gone back home, the orphans and the old people had gone back home. But we figured how we were wondering how orphans really can go back home, because it's an orphanage. They don't have anyone to go back to. So it was established that we did a spy cam kind of setup. Though we were really scared, it was our first assignment. We could establish the link that it was a fake thing. So we didn't. What we put out in the story was that this is what we found. This is what happened when we went to the address. This is what the owner had to say. Again, it was not a great piece of investigative story, but I'm trying to convey that that's how simply, just by observing around us, just by looking at small things, that we figured out, we got 2 investigative stories, and I cleared that particular course because of these 2 stories. Similarly, a lot of my batchmates have several stories to say how they figured out a lot of things. So that was my first experience doing some investigative stories. And then after IIJNM, my 1-year course at IIJNM, it was a great experience. I think more about that you'll hear in the coming days from others. But let me talk about what happens after IIJNM. Placements happened, and I got placed in a TV channel called as News 9. It was based out of Bangalore. It belonged to the TV9 group. It was a small brand. That particular year, we didn't have too many companies hiring for TV, which is not the case. This particular year, I'm told that a lot of people have been hired, and majority of the batch has already been hired by a lot of companies that have come in. So in my particular batch that year, though TV Times Now had come in, CNBC had come in, CNN had come in. Finally, I think only for Hindi they picked up, and I wanted to be in an English channel. So News 9 I joined, and then I was there on the desk for one particular year. Like I told you, my interest lied in front of the camera, and I really wanted to be out there, but they kept saying, "No, you're a fresher. We can't give you the responsibility of reporting," which is justified. I was on the desk for 1 year, and trust me, what I learned on the desk was how packages are made, how stories are put forward, whatever the reporters sent, how I can use it to the optimum way. And I learned a lot in that one particular year. I was there hardly for 10 months, after which I moved from News 9 to Times Now in Hyderabad. Times Now had an opening, and I was purely lucky there because they wanted someone who had more than around 8 to 10 years experience for the Hyderabad bureau, and I had only 11 months of experience as a journalist. And of course, Arnab was heading Times Now at that time, and I had a series of interviews, and the last interview was taken by Arnab. And in the interview, I heard from him very badly, wherein he was like, how do you think you can even apply for a job where we have clearly said, 8 to 10 years experience? You have bloody 11 months of experience. What audacity you have to waste my time? He went on and on. He wasn't like how he was in channels, but he definitely spoke a lot, which kind of demotivated me, saying, why did I even try? I shouldn't have. And then exactly 2 days after, but I kept telling him, I can do it. I'm sure I can. I'm confident, the regular stuff. And then after exactly 2 days, I get a call from the HR saying I've got the job. And it was very surprising because 11 months experience and they wanted 8 years experience. And again, I'm telling you this example not to brag about myself, but to tell you, in rules or on paper, they might say a particular job requires a certain criteria, a certain amount of experience. But if you are confident about cracking that, if you think you have the ability to convince someone, please go ahead and try. Even today, when I see an opening, when I apply, I don't look at the criteria. I'm like, this is my profile. I know what I am. And if they think I am eligible, they will give me the job. So please don't be restricted when you are applying to new places, new organizations. Don't be restricted by the criteria. They are fluidic. They are ready to be flexible as long as you are confident that you are a learner or you will adapt to the situation. Okay. Now coming to Times Now, I was there for around 4.5 years in Times Now, heading the Hyderabad bureau, and it was a great experience because I got to travel a lot again, and because my mother tongue is Malayalam, they would send me often to Kerala. Also, I got to travel to Tamil Nadu, and considering I studied in Bangalore, they assumed I knew Kannada. With the little knowledge I knew, I never corrected them to say I didn't know Kannada. So with the little knowledge I knew, I was all over the place. I traveled to Kerala, Tamil Nadu. I was here in Andhra and Telangana. So it was a great experience. In terms of stories, I think as soon as I joined, one of the first few stories was PV Sindhu had come back after winning the bronze at the Olympics. And I thought, yeah, Sindhu has come back. All the media channels were there covering her parents, watching the game. And it was a great experience. And after the game was done, I thought, okay, done. My job is done. I'm done for the day. Let's call it a day. I'm going home. And that's when Arnav gives me a call. And Arnav calls. He's like, Paul, Sindhu has won the bronze. I said, yes, I know. I just gave a live on it. And then he said, which means I need Sindhu. Sindhu's parents. Okay. And then we were like, Sindhu's parents are not talking to media. Very clearly, they have categorically told us that they're not talking to media. And he said, no, I don't care. I need Sindhu's parents. So I'm like, how I can't tell no to Arnab. I don't know now what he's going to say next. And then there's immense pressure because you won't believe there some around 100 media personnel are there vying for their blood. Like they just need even 1 minute just to show it's the TRP game is a crazy world out there. And everyone wants Sindhu's parents. I don't know how I managed to get Sindhu's parents on live. It's probably the fear of Arnab taking my case that I went all out. I begged him literally saying, sir, I need your interview. I need this. He said, no, I'm not giving anyone. I don't know why. Probably seeing my reaction or my fear, he took the earphone from me and put it and said, yes, Arnab, tell me. And immediately it went live. And that happened to be the first interview that they gave any channel. Again, when I look back, it seems so funny about how such a small thing played such an important thing in my life. And when I finished that particular interview, I felt like I'd done something great, achieved. I felt as if I myself had got the bronze medal, probably happier than Sindhu. That's how simple and how organically that we happen to understand how this industry is. And then eventually it became bigger things. And one of the bigger stories I remember was, let me move to another story because stories will give you more insight into how the industry works. I don't know if you remember, there's this TDP MLA called as JC Divakar Reddy. He's no more a legislator. He was, and he hailed from Anantapur district. So I got a piece of information that there was some ruckus at the Vizag airport. He was flying from Vizag to I think Hyderabad. And I got this information, and then I called up the Vizag airport director, and he said, no, no, nothing happened. It was a very small argument that took place. So I said, okay, like officially, if you're saying that, fine. Then I realized it was Divakar Reddy, JC Divakar Reddy, who was part of this particular thing, and it became very interesting because it's not common for a VIP to come to an airport and kick up a storm over whatever it is. Then through my sources, I found out that he had actually turned up 20 minutes before the flight, and they said the counters are closed, and he demanded that he be put on board. And a ruckus broke out there. This is the only information that we knew. It's called flashing when you put it on the group and tell your office. So I flashed saying, it's an MP, JC Divakar Reddy, and this is what happened. A ruckus happened, and that's all we had. And then very soon, fortunately, the Indigo staff told me that JC Divakar Reddy had actually taken a printer and threw it on the ground because he was so angry about them not letting him. And we didn't believe it. I'm like, how can a public representative behave like that, especially in a place like an airport? And that had happened. And so first thing, he landed and he boarded that particular flight as expected, and he landed in Hyderabad and he went to his house. So I went directly to his house. So by the time he landed here and reached his house, I reached his house and I happened to meet him. Like, he didn't know that we knew about it. So I just said, sir, you flew today from Vizag? He said, yes, I flew from Vizag. And then I said, sir, did any issue happen at the airport? He said, no issue. This is how he talks, okay? He said, no issue at all. Then I said, sir, I heard you were late for the flight. I came 45 minutes early and there was some confusion, but they allowed me to board the flight. So I said, but sir, I'm hearing you came 20 minutes early. He said, no. Then he said, when I stressed upon it a little, he said, yes, I'm an MLA. Why am I not allowed 20 minutes? It's not early. So on camera, he accepted that he was 20 minutes early. And he didn't expect it to blow out of proportion so much that within the next 15-20 minutes, he had like another 100 media persons at his house, and everyone was vying for the same story. And fortunately, my Delhi colleague who handles aviation, civil aviation, this is how in tandem everyone works. Though the story was from here, she managed to get the CCTV footage of the Vizag Indigo desk, wherein very clearly it showed this guy coming in at so-and-so time and this guy having an argument, the staff getting up, this guy picking up the printer and throwing it down. It was all caught on CCTV. So it nailed his lie, wherein he said 45 minutes. So they played it in loop, wherein he said, no, I reached 45 minutes before. And then CCTV of him at that particular counter. Then him saying, no, there was no argument, nothing. And him throwing the printer down. So it became a big case wherein, and after that, he refused to give interviews to any media for another 4-5 hours, which meant Times Now was the only channel which had his interview for almost 4 to 5 hours. So generally, it's only minutes difference. But that day, I was just lucky that we nailed the story because we got every element. Fortunately, it's just about being at the right time at the right place. If I had not caught Divakar Reddy there at his house, even I would have just been like any other person vying for any new element in the story. So what happened was, eventually the story died down within a week. But the impact of the story was he was barred from flying by almost, I think, 7 airlines had barred him from flying. And then the DGCA, which is the Director General of Civil Aviation, decided that there will be a concept called as no-fly list. It was after this particular incident wherein they decided that hooligans like Divakar Reddy will not be allowed to fly in the future in case they behave in this kind of way. So it was a huge thing. A no-fly list had come out of the story. It was then picked up by everyone and everyone continuously reported it. But the fact that a small story, an interview could actually change the entire rules of civil aviation by a small reporter like me, that again gave me a lot of hope that, how much ever people say media is this, media is biased, if you really want to bring about small changes, you can actually be satisfied by what you can achieve. So moving on, that was a story at Times Now. We also got to cover a lot of cyclones, floods, and all these were learning experiences from each of these stories about how you can do it, how you work in a certain situation, and how you can bring to light a lot of people's problems. Because during a cyclone, a lot of these people lose houses. So a lot of those experiences we can put out through our work, and it gives you a very powerful platform. However biased Times Now may be, However, people would keep telling me that, your channel is biased, your channel is BJP's, bootlicker. A lot of things keep coming away. But as long as you know that you are doing your work sincerely, I don't think you need to really be worried about it, because whatever stories I did, I ensured that I fought with the channel saying, you can't, do this to the story, you can't do that to the story. And finally, we were able to put out a collection of stories in the last 4.5 years that I was with Times Now. Following which, I got an opportunity to work with the News Minute. So News Minute, I hope some of you at least know, we cover South India and we do only South India. So a lot of people in News Minute are people who were ex Times Now. They're all people who are in the TV industry, and they realized that South India is not getting its due coverage, and we are always, one small part of the main news bulletin. So they decided to start something which exclusively covers South India, and that's how News Minute was born. Now it's around 8 years old. I joined them 2 years ago, and now I handle a team of 5 reporters. We cover Andhra and Telangana, and we get to do a lot of stories. The difference, you might ask me about my transition from TV. TV was a lot of running around. It was hectic. It had that adrenaline rush of being at the right places. Like there's a flood and there's a cyclone and people are running away from there. We are probably heading right to the epicenter of that particular cyclone. It's as exciting, and of course, families were scared about what they call foolishness of what we were doing. But each story that we covered, it gave us immense satisfaction, and the small impacts that we could do also was really encouraging, to say the least. And to move from that to digital, digital was much more slower. It meant I could work on my story for more time. It meant I can sit in the comfort of my room and do a powerful story and not really head out. Whenever there's a ground report that needs to be done, I head to the field. When I have to meet people, I head to the field. Otherwise, you can actually sit at a place and do a beautiful story about what's happening, bring out in-depth versions of what is happening, and it's very powerful because it gives out much more details about a particular incident than in TV I could ever. I felt TV is much more shallow than what I can do in new media, but given the experiences and the adrenaline rush, TV has its own advantages. I'm not saying this to discourage you from taking TV. I'm still very much a broadcast person. I love being on camera. I love being there where the news is. So it will continue to remain my first love, but I'm saying digital or new media is still a beautiful place to be, because I can do videos, I can write text copies, I can do an amalgamation of both. In IIJNM as well, there's a particular, I don't know if it's course, it's one particular subject called as convergence, wherein they teach you to put everything together. TV guys, multimedia guys, broadcast, print guys can work together, and they can put out something wherein you have multimedia elements, you have broadcast videos, you have text copies. So it's a beautiful multimedia thing that you're putting out, wherein you have multiple elements. So convergence was also a beautiful thing at IIJNM. I'm sorry. So that was one really interesting thing at IIJNM, wherein you got to experience all three things. And like I said, it wasn't really difficult for me moving from broadcast. In fact, some people ask me, if you wanted to end up in digital, do you think you should have actually studied digital? I say no. I was happy that I studied broadcast, because today I learned the skill sets required in digital during my job or on my job. And I have the elements from broadcast because I studied broadcast. So I don't consider it as a wastage of time at all. I think it brings in more skills and more skill sets required for this particular job. And also, people ask me, engineering also went waste. Frankly speaking, I can do a lot of stories better than a lot of others because I'm an engineer, especially considering technical topics. If I have to report about science, if I have to, being in a bureau, you get to report about all stories irrespective of beats. Like otherwise in Delhi, you'll have a political beat, you'll have a crime beat, you'll have health. Here we do crime, we do politics, we do health, we do science, we do technology. So there are certain topics which I feel I can understand better. Excuse me. If it's about missiles, if it's about anything else, there are so many things I feel, it's easier for me to understand because I'm an engineer. So again, that also didn't go waste. So I'm saying all these things together have just added to a profile. So if you are an engineer and you're listening to me right now, you do have no reason to be discouraged. In fact, we had 12 engineers in my particular batch of 90 students, and all 12 of us ended up doing really well. And the college also believes that engineers are people who change their career and come, so they're very serious about their course. So if you're an engineer, you're at an advantage and not at a disadvantage. Personally, that's what I feel. In the news minute, I'll quickly tell you about two stories that I did. One was recently in January, I did a story about how it was an investigative story. I got an information that an IAS officer, a special chief secretary here in Telangana, he had his daughter's wedding, and I figured out from a particular source that his daughter's wedding was probably funded by an irrigation company. So he works in the irrigation department. So it's very interesting how why would an irrigation company pay for his daughter's wedding? That kind of interested me, and I went full on into the story. It took me around a month to investigate how and where could I prove it. And finally, let me tell you the end result of it. End result was that we could prove that Mega Engineering, which is a huge engineering company, had actually funded a large part of his daughter's wedding, which ran into lakhs of money, which meant they did the hotel bookings for his daughter's wedding at a five-star hotel here. They had arranged a dinner for hundreds of people at a seven-star hotel in Hyderabad. And all of this, his daughter's, it's a personal event, but why was an engineering company funding it? And they didn't do it directly. They had formed shell companies so that people wouldn't, like someone looking, they wouldn't know. They had formed shell companies, and through the shell companies, they diverted money to the hotel, and they had actually paid for the wedding. So this particular story was very interesting because one, he's in a very powerful position, and second, Mega Engineering was being in the news for getting several projects across India, not only Andhra and Telangana. So we established that, and this story did really well. Sad part of the story, now I've been always talking about impact. Sad part of the story is he's very close to Chief Minister K. Chandrasekhar Rao. No action was taken against him, despite the fact that we had evidence that we could nail him. We could pinpoint and say, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is the sequence of events, this is how money was diverted. No action was taken against him. He continues to remain in power, continues to remain the CM's right hand. But the only satisfaction I got from the story is that his image has been tarnished. Today, whenever he goes around, people look at him as a person who has done corruption, as a person who took money for his daughter's wedding from a company which works under him, which has a lot of orders. One of Telangana's biggest irrigation project is being done by Mega Engineering, and the conflict of interest is visible to everyone. So I'm saying every story that you do, you will not get an impact. There are many times where stories are not put out by editors. They don't have the spine to put out the story. My editor stood by me, asked me to put it out, and said, let them go to court. We will fight it out. We have all the evidence. She ensured that a due process is followed. And if you ask me what was the effort worth it, yes, it took around 45 days and a lot of fighting to convince my editor, to convince my colleagues, to convince our legal team, because the legal team was like, you put out the story, it's going to be a viral story, but what is going to follow after the story is beyond what the company can afford. NewsMinute is a small company. If they file defamation, if they file any kind of case, the legal journey of fighting that particular case is going to be really troubling for the company. So a lot of convincing had to take place. Finally, we put out the story, and yes, they went ahead and filed a case that's going on in court. But the satisfaction is that we could put out the story, and today a lot of people know me because of this particular story. It had zero impact. He was not suspended, he was not removed from service. But today, when I go and introduce myself to any bureaucrat, he says, oh, Paul Oommen, the person who did the IAS story. So that's enough. That's the kind of satisfaction I have. A lot of people say so much effort, but zero result. Doesn't matter. We have put out our work, and that's all that matters. Another story is I got to travel to Andhra. There was a lot of conversation about how ganja was being grown in Andhra Pradesh, how cannabis was grown. And so we were very interested because Andhra is my territory, but it was happening in the agency areas, which is where the tribals are actually living, on the mountains or the hills of Andhra. So I decided I'll go there and I'll find out. Obviously, it was a big thing because outsiders, you can't just go into their territory and talk to them. They will not reveal details. So I went there, I stayed there for a week in the hills, and I interacted with them. I understood the story. I understood the chain of supply, how it is grown, how much they make, how it is supplied, who are the middlemen. what are the type of efforts that go in? Are police and the people who grow, are they in hand? Are they hand in glove? How much of it is given to the police? So the entire thing, I put it out as a series of three stories, and it went out as three stories. And I believe a lot was being done from the police end also to curb the menace, but entirely they did not want to curb the menace. So it was a very mutual thing, and who gained out of all this was also very interesting. Please go back. You can Google the News Minute Ganja and it'll come up. Please read the series. It'll give you an idea about how the system works and how we divided it into a series, two stories in the series. So this was one particular ground report. We got experiences of traveling to a lot of places. Like I said, because in digital, I can spend 1 week on a story. I can spend 1 month on a story if my editor believes it's a story worth putting so much effort. In TV, that cannot be the case. You will be on the story on a daily basis. There'll be so much that's happening that you don't have time to sit on one particular story. You'll be moving from story to story, and that is a very different format. And people's attention span is also very less. So probably TV works for them. But people who really want information, even anytime you go back to my story and you read it, you know the reporter has actually put in a lot of effort for getting these details. This is the sequence. A lot of things have been revealed. So that even today, when I have to show some stories of mine on my profile, I'm very proud to put out the stories. I think the proudest would be to put out stories I've done for the digital platform in the last 2 years, because I feel they're more in depth. So I think we're running out of time. It's almost 11:45. I would like to conclude by saying I hope that at least some of you have gained from my experiences. Like I said, 7 years is not a long time. 8 years back, I was sitting amongst you, like I'm one among you, and I had my own doubts. In fact, I was at this particular stage, I remember I had reached out to almost 2 dozen or more people. I went to these organizations and I look for names that are familiar. Because I'm a Malayali, I look for people from Kerala. Because I'm from Hyderabad, I looked for Telugu people as well. Because wanted something in common. So then I messaged them saying, I'm planning to take up journalism. I have no idea. Can you please guide me? Out of the 20, 30 messages I sent, I think hardly around two or three people wrote back because they're very busy. They have their own things. Usually my messages go to the others folder. They may not see it or they might see it much later. But those two, three people were able to guide me and give me a lot of information. And today, as alumni of IIJNM, I think IIJNM, the best thing about them is that they have a wonderful alumni connect. So you have a lot of seniors, and in every organization that you see today, you have people who've studied from IIJNM who are there in the organization, and they can really help you either tell you about openings in the organization or put in a word for you, or actually just when you want to, have a doubt. I have so many people reaching out to me via mail, via messages asking, what do you think I should do? I'm confused. This is my stage. Should I take up this? So you can always reach out to your seniors, and that's a beauty that IIJNM gives. Be it any organization you take for. I'm not here to root for one particular organization. I'm just telling you advantages of the place I've studied, but you can choose where you want to go, what you want to do. It worked perfectly for me because after 4 years of engineering, 1 year of studies would actually help me pivot my career into journalism. And that 1 year diploma was enough. In journalism, they don't ask you beyond that. They just want a diploma in journalism is enough. Rest is about how you take it forward, your capabilities, your effort, how much you put in. So that's enough. If you're confused about what branch to take, don't worry, give yourself some time. You will figure that out. I think, Nandana, we can take up some questions. I hope I haven't taken up too much time from the questions part.
No.
I'm open to questions if they have any.
I think we can start with Suryansh's question. Suryansh, if you want to
yeah, you can answer the question.
Turn on your mic and ask the question.
Yeah, it was very enlightening to hear you, sir, and thank you for your time. I had a question. What made you change your mind? I mean, you were studying engineering, right? And then you chose journalism. So, I mean, why this transformation? Like after engineering, maybe you could have gone one for something like some jobs related to engineering, and then figure out, okay, maybe this doesn't work, and maybe now I can do journalism, right? So.
Yeah, I get this question a lot. So after my 12th, I wanted to do journalism, but I had no idea. I come from a family of engineers, right? From my grandparents are engineers. I had no idea that, you can where are the universities, where could I go? Probably it's my ignorance, or I didn't research enough back then. So by then it was time for engineering examinations. I wrote the examination, I got admission into college, and my parents said, do one thing, go for engineering and then figure out. Like most parents in India, I did my mechanical engineering. I liked mechanical as well. It was never that I didn't like, nor did I have backlogs. I cleared, I got a job in Cognizant. And that day, by then, I had really prepared my mind. I'd researched enough to make up for what I'd done after 12th or not done after 12th. I had researched, I reached out to a lot of people. And then with that job offer, I went to my parents and said, I've got my job in Cognizant. Now let me go and follow my dreams. And they said, please go ahead. You've done what we had asked you to do, and you seem confident and well researched about what you want to do. And I had the option of doing a degree, a 2 or 3 year degree, 2 year degree in any college for journalism, or this 10-month course. 10 months seemed very small, and I was not sure whether a diploma will hold any value. But like I said, it changed my life, the way, the career I wanted to. I might change my career again, but at least the last 7 or 8 years that I've been in journalism, it's been very interesting. And that one particular course of 10 months was enough to actually help me move from engineering to journalism.
And I have another question. So you spoke about the editor. What role exactly the editor has in a news organization and news media? I mean, when you speak of editor, the first thing that comes in my mind is, you're editing whatever news report you have, you're editing the language, the grammar and everything, and, the words and everything, so that, you're able to convey the message in an easy way to the readers.
So there are different kinds, and also each organization has a different structure. Generally, the editor that you're talking about are sub-editors. They are the ones who work on the language. The editor or the editor-in-chief of an organization is the one who decides the stand that the channel takes. For example, if there's an incident that has happened, for example, the recent example being a gang rape in Hyderabad, whether to take up the story or whether to drop the story, because a lot of influential people are involved. Should we go after the influential people, or should we just drop the story because it has influential people and it may conflict with our interests? That is a call that the editor takes. As a reporter, I can only tell them that this has happened, this is the sequence, this is a story that we need to follow, but the editor is the one who takes the final call. So it's a lot of it depends on the editor or the editor-in-chief. Like I said here, my editor-in-chief is Danya in the News Minute, and she decides how. Like, I pitch a story saying I want to travel to Andhra for ganja and I need a week. 1 week of a reporter's time is very long. Is she, as an editor, ready to let go of me for a week? I won't even have my phone. I didn't have my phone for 1 week. I did not have network. Is she ready to give up a reporter or a person who's handling the bureau, who puts the bureau together for 1 week? Is the story really important? There are times where she's told me it's very different to work with different editors. So I said, I'm not sure how many people will read the story, Danya, but she's like, doesn't matter. Put out the story. That's what matters. So that's very different approach by an editor, and having really good, strong editors can actually mold your career or mold you as a person or as a journalist. So it's important. And what you are referring to are sub editors. So we have our organization has around 7 or 8 sub editors who work on the language. Danya also works on the language once in a while, but she takes the important call of whether a story should go, how a story should go, how much in depth should the story go, what are the angles that the story takes. So these are the editorial calls taken by the editor. I hope I answered.
So Anuran, would you like to ask the question, or I'll read it out?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Yeah, okay.
So first of all, good morning, sir. Really nice to hear from you. Sir, a very basic question from me. Sir, as you were quite confident in front of the camera, sir, there are many people who are actually the opposite and nervous. Like when they speak in front of the camera, there are many chances of fumbling. So what tips would you like to give them, and also to the newcomers, to stay confident in front of the camera?
Okay, so that is where I feel the course actually helps you. When we started off, there are a lot of people in our batch as well who are not confident on camera. When the camera is turned off, they could do a complete P2C, a piece to camera confidently. But once the camera is on, you see that light blinking, you start stuttering, you're worried, your hands are shivering. It's part of the learning process. We have all been through that. So I feel people are not confident. Two things. One, you don't have to always be on camera. TV doesn't mean being on camera. there's a very popular misconception that मेरा बेटा टीवी में काम करता है, मेरा बेटा एंकर है. Beyond anchoring a show, there are so many roles in the TV industry. Like I know people, friends and juniors and seniors who are there in the production. That is behind the anchor. You have an entire team working in the PCR, the main production control room. There you have vision mixers, you have audio mixers, you have people working on the ticker, you have cameramen, and you have alumni from our college who are there in all these roles in organizations. So it's very important to understand being on camera is not the only way. For all you know, your strength might be in production of a particular show. I have friends who are doing camera work in organizations. I have friends who are actually, they're producing shows. Their interest may be creativity. They can probably tell exactly how a show should go, what would make it interesting for the viewer. So there are many roles in TV. If you think you are not cut out for being in front of the camera, it's perfectly all right. The people behind the camera play an equally important role to ensure that a show goes out. And very often when we are credited for our story, we ensure that we say that, it's not just me, there's an entire army of people working behind. And because even if a digital copy goes out, there are editors, there are people who proofread it again, there are people who put out the copy, who upload the copy. So it's not always one person. A reporter is just one in the chain, probably the one that's most prominent, but there are a lot of people in the chain that's equally important and allow that person to put out the story. So there are several roles. You don't need to be worried about not being comfortable on camera. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Please try being on camera. If you still think you're not cut out for it, please check out. The beauty of the stories that you do at IIJNM is, like I said, you get to be a vision mixer 1 week. You get to be the audio mixer 1 week. You get to be the camera person 1 week. Like I hated being the camera person because I want to be in front of it, but it allowed me to understand how the camera person works. So if I didn't get my frame right, we had a faculty saying, I don't care what your interest is. You need to understand how the frame works. You can't have a light behind you. You need to have the light in front of you. If the light is behind you, it's not going to show your footage is not going to be clear. So when I'm a reporter, when my camera person tells me, "Sun udhar hai, aap idhar khadiye," I understand that, this is what even I've learned. I know how this works. Like even in engineering, we were taught to do plumbing. We were taught to do what an electrician does. Not because we have to do that, but we need to understand as an engineer how these small things work, how the end product is made. If there is some defect in one of these, it can affect your final output. So it's important to understand that there are various roles. Hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir.
Sony. So would you like to ask the question or I read it out? Is Neha here? Okay, no issues, Neha. So Neha has asked, like you said, you are quite sure about that journalism is what you want to do. What advice do you have for those who aren't so confident about the field that they want to pursue?
I was there, Neha. Like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I joined engineering. But by the end of it, I knew engineering is not my calling. Sitting in front of a desktop and working at a software company was not what I wanted to do. So I think elimination of options will actually help. Write down on a piece of paper, what are the options in front of you? What are the things that you want to study? And write down the pros and cons of it and figure out this is the one that I relate to the most. For a lot of people, coming to one particular option may be very difficult. So the elimination process helps. Remove out all the ones you don't want to do. And then you'll figure out you're left with only 2 or 3, and it makes it much more easier. Personally, if I can help you in any way, if you want to talk, also please talk to people in the industry. Like if you give anyone a call, anyone in the industry, if you know someone, or talk to the faculty at IIJNM or anyone, any career person, they'll tell you that this is what you can do in this field, this is what you can do in that field. Like investigative journalism has a lot of technicalities, a lot of software that you have to use to help you in the investigation. So that isn't my strength. So I didn't take up investigative journalism as a full-time thing because you need to really be good in softwares. So I eliminated my option. I do investigative stories, but I take help from people who are good at those softwares. Generally, investigative journalists have to be really good at using a lot of software to eliminate a lot of data and come to what you specifically want. Data scraping, a lot of technical terms are there in that. So if you are good at that, there are a lot of options. Narrowing down your options may actually help you now.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
Yeah, I have another question.
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, so how important is Kannada language? Since I'm a North Indian, I don't know the language, South Indian language. So will it be a kind of impediment? When I go out posting stories in South India, I'll not be able to connect with people or not able to get information what I want.
Okay, what stage are you in, Suryansh? Have you already got admission into IIJNM?
Yeah, I've already got.
Oh, you got admission. Okay. So our batch, my particular batch had 90 people. And I'll tell you, majority of them, in fact, Kannadigas were only 4 or 5 in the batch. The rest of them were from across the country. We had people from Kashmir till Kerala. Kerala, we had a good number of people. So this way, I'm saying none of us knew Kannada when we came to Bangalore. And that was the fun part of it. Being in a city, not knowing the language and going and getting a stories. Imagine how difficult that is. It was difficult. It was a struggle. I'll tell you, it was not easy in any way. My faculty are there on this particular call, but I'm telling you, every single week was a struggle. But if you ask me whether we got stories, yes, we got stories. We went there with the broken Hindi that we knew, and with the broken Kannada that we knew. People don't know, but Bangalore is a place where you will find people who know Hindi, people who know. You can manage with the languages that you know. If you don't know any South Indian language as well, it's not very difficult. By the end of the course, we had people, at least may not be very fluently, but have a conversation with the shopkeeper to tell them what exactly you need, to tell the auto driver where you need to go. So all these are things you pick up in the course, and I think we are at an age where we can easily pick up these small things, and it shouldn't be a problem. It is going to be difficult, but it's not impossible.
And you mentioned, you covered a story about an IS officer, right? And that case, I mean, they have the government. I mean, the IS officer has filed a case against the news media, who are newsmen. And I mean, what will be the result? Suppose the case goes in favor of them, then will news minute will have to be a compensation, and then how will that impact your association or your role in that organization? Because you were the one
Yeah, just a correction. It's not the IS officer who has filed a case. Clearly, he knew that, what he did. He knew he was caught. So it is the engineering company that has filed a case against the News Minute. And not only us, for 40 other media outlets for picking up the story that we did and for putting it out. So they got a stay from the court saying we can't publicize this particular news anymore. So we went to a higher court, the media organizations together, and the higher court struck it down. So, like I said, it might be a long journey, but we have all the evidences to prove our claim. And it's just a matter of time before, we are very confident that we will win this case. And as a reporter, how does it affect me? In journalism, what they say is that the more number of cases that you have against you, the more powerful stories you have done. It's a matter of pride. It's an unwritten thing, but they generally say, like when I told a lot of people I have a case, they're like, congratulations. This is probably the only field where you hear congrats for getting a case against you. So just ensure that each of your steps that you take during the course, like I had my editor who kept telling me, we've had one particular Google Drive only for documents. Every call was recorded. Every conversation, we took a screenshot. Every text message was accounted for. Because now, when the case comes up for hearing 4 years later, you can't scratch your head saying, oh, I didn't do that. So these are people who are guiding you, who have been through this process. So all these media organizations have multiple cases against them. So throughout, she kept telling me, take a screenshot, record the call, put it into the drive. So on a daily basis, we were updating the drive with all the evidences, all the documents. So today, like yesterday, we had a call from the court. So whenever we have that thing, we have our drive full of documents. We just have to go to the relevant date and say, this is the clarification given. IS officer says this is not true, denies, and later we have the company had actually called us and said, don't put out the story. We will do the needful. So we have that call recorded. So we have multiple evidences for us. Today they filed a case, but there was an attempt from them to actually ensure that we don't put out the story. That's an equally important evidence. So we have a lot of things like that, which we are accounted for. And the entire process, we just ensure, as a reporter, it is a long journey. If you have a media organization, like for example, News Minute is supposed to fight the case for me. Most organizations do. The problem is when I want to change my job from News Minute to another other company, News Minute should agree to continue the fight for me. Like any organization which values its reporter will continue the fight, because I had done the story when I was with News Minute, and that's what's expected. Very few cases where the company says you have moved on, now you can find someone else to fight your case. Yeah.
Okay, I think we've come to the end of the session. I think we've already overstepped your time, Paul, a little bit.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
So thank you so much for agreeing to do this for us and making the
Pleasure.
first session of our 2022 storyboarding journalism series a very successful one. It was really insightful and interactive as well. And thank you for to all the participants who came in today and asking all of the important questions that you asked. So we hope to see you every other week from now on. We'll be having more alumni and other working journalists coming in from the field and talking to you about other topics as well. So thank you so much for joining in. Again, thank you, Paul, for agreeing to do this for us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys. All the best. And please attend the storyboarding sessions, because you're getting a range of journalists. They are trying very hard to get a lot of journalists to come, and it will give you, like, if I have given you one perspective, the person coming next week may give you a totally different perspective. So please ensure it's just 1 hour. Take time to listen to them, and also reach out to your seniors, anyone you know. You can connect with me also on Twitter, on social media. Paul Oommen is my name. You can just look that up and you'll find me. Thanks, guys.